Last year, JP Morgan Chase made $58 billion in profit. That's not revenue. That's not gross income. That's pure, clean profit. After expenses, after salaries, after everything. $58 billion in a single year. Now, open your banking app. Go to your savings account. Look at the interest you earned last month. For most people watching this right now, that number is somewhere between nothing and embarrassing. If you have $10,000 sitting in a standard savings account at one of America's biggest banks, you probably earned less this year than you'd spend on a single lunch. Your bank made $58 billion. You made 4. So here's the question nobody seems to be asking out loud. How does that happen? In the same economy? With your money? Because here's what most people don't know. The gap between what your bank earns and what it pays you isn't an accident. It isn't bad luck. It isn't the economy. It's a system, built deliberately, running perfectly, and it's been quietly draining your savings for decades. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly how the machine works, and more importantly, how to stop feeding it. Let's start with the basics, because most people have no idea how bad the situation actually is. Right now, the average savings account at a major U.S. bank pays an interest rate of around 0.4% per year. Some pay as low as 0.01%. 0.01%. Let's do the math together. You put $10,000 in a savings account. At 0.01%, after one full year, you've earned $1. $1 for trusting them with 10,000 of yours. Now here's where it gets really painful. Inflation, the rate at which the cost of everything you buy goes up, averages around 3% a year. In recent years, it's been closer to 5 or 6. That means the $10,000 you have in the bank today, in 10 years, it will still say 10,000 on the screen. But in real terms, in terms of what it can actually buy, you've lost 20%, maybe more. Your savings account isn't saving you. It's slowly erasing you. And the most insidious part, it doesn't feel like a loss. The number doesn't go down. Nothing looks wrong. It's a theft so quiet, so slow, that most people never notice it's happening. But your bank notices. Because while your money is losing value sitting still, your bank is doing anything but sitting still. Here's something that should be taught in every school, but almost never is. When you deposit money in a bank, that money does not sit in a vault with your name on it, waiting for you to come back. The moment your paycheck hits your account, your bank gets to work with it. This is called fractional reserve banking, and it is the fundamental engine of the entire financial system. Here's how it works. Regulators only require banks to keep a fraction of your deposits on hand, historically around 10%. The rest, they lend out immediately to other customers. So when you deposit $10,000, your bank keeps maybe $1,000 in reserve and lends out $9,000 to someone else as a car loan, a mortgage, a business loan, a credit card balance. Now, think about what just happened. You gave them $10,000. They lend $9,000 of it out at, let's say, 7% interest. 7% of $9,000 is $630 a year. That's money flowing into the bank. And what do they pay you for the privilege of using your money to generate that return? 0.01%. $1. That gap between what they earn on your money and what they pay you back has a name. Bankers call it the net interest margin, and it is the single most important number in banking. It is how banks get rich. But wait, it gets better, or worse, depending on which side you're on, because the net interest margin isn't even the whole story. Banks have a second layer of income that most people never think about. Fees, overdraft fees, monthly maintenance charges, out-of-network ATM fees, wire transfer fees, forward transaction fees, late payment fees. The list is almost comically long. In 2023, American banks collected over $8 billion in overdraft fees alone. $8 billion. From people whose accounts briefly went negative, often by just a few dollars. Now, how do we get here? Because it wasn't always this way. In the 1980s and 1990s, a wave of financial deregulation swept through the United States. Banks were given more freedom to operate. Interest rate caps were lifted. Geographic restrictions disappeared. The old rules that once protected depositors were quietly dismantled one by one. By the time the dust settled, banks had become something new, something closer to investment machines than the old neighborhood institutions that held your Christmas club fund. The system had changed, but nobody told the depositors. And so millions of people kept doing what their parents had done and their grandparents before them, putting their money in a savings account and trusting the bank to take care of it. The banks were more than happy to let that habit continue. To understand why the gap is as wide as it is today, you have to know 3 specific moments in history. 3 forks in the road where the system chose the bank over the depositor every single time. The first moment, 2008. When the financial crisis hit, a crisis caused largely by reckless banking behavior, the Federal Reserve responded by slashing interest rates to near zero. The logic was to stimulate borrowing, kickstart the economy, prevent total collapse. It worked. The economy recovered. Banks recovered. Faster than anyone else, actually. But here's what happened to your savings account during that recovery. Nothing. Interest rates for depositors hit the floor, and they stayed there for over a decade. From 2008 to 2022, 14 years, the average savings account paid essentially zero, while the stock market tripled, while real estate values soared, while banks posted record profits year after year. Depositors got nothing. The second moment, 2022 to 2023, inflation spiked. The Federal Reserve started raising interest rates aggressively, the fastest pace of rate hikes in 40 years. Rates went from near zero to over 5%. This meant banks were suddenly able to earn much higher returns on the money they lend out. Mortgage rates jumped to 7, 8%. Car loans climbed to 9, 10%. Credit card rates hit 20, 25%. And savings accounts? They went from 0.01% to about 0.4. Banks raised their lending rates instantly when it helped them. They raised yours by almost nothing. The third moment, the lobbying machine. This one is less dramatic, less visible, but perhaps the most important of all. Every year, the banking industry spends hundreds of millions of dollars lobbying Congress and regulators. The goal is always the same. Fewer rules, more flexibility, less obligation to the people they serve. In countries where banks face stricter requirements, where regulators mandate more competitive deposit rates, savers do better. In Germany, in Australia, in parts of Southeast Asia, the gap between what banks earn and what they pay depositors is significantly smaller. The low savings rate you're experiencing isn't a law of nature. It's a policy choice made by people with expensive suits and very good lawyers. And it has been incredibly, spectacularly profitable for them. So here's the question that should be nagging at you right now. If the banks are making billions on our deposits while paying us almost nothing, why do we stay? Why don't people just move their money? The answer isn't laziness. It's psychology. And it's more interesting than you might think. The first force at work is called status quo bias. Humans are hardwired to treat inaction as safe and action as risky, even when the math says the opposite. Switching banks feels like a hassle. There might be something to link, something to update, a direct deposit to redirect. The effort feels significant even when it isn't. Meanwhile, the cost of staying, losing thousands of dollars in potential interest over a decade, feels abstract, far away, not quite real. Our brains choose the discomfort we can see over the loss we can't feel. And banks know this. They are counting on it. The second force is the invisibility of loss. When you lose money to a bad investment, you feel it. The number goes down. It stings. But when your savings lose value to inflation, the number doesn't change. It still says 10,000. Nothing feels wrong. Behavioral economists call this money illusion, the tendency to focus on the nominal value of money rather than its real purchasing power. You see 10,000 and feel fine. You don't see the $2,000 of purchasing power that quietly disappeared. The third force is trust, specifically the trust we extend to big, familiar brands. Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo. These names are everywhere. They've been part of your life since childhood. Your parents bank there. You feel safe there. That feeling of safety is real. But it's financial safety, FDIC insurance, stability, not going bankrupt, not the kind of safety that protects your money from silently losing value year after year. You traded the wrong kind of safety and got nothing in return. And finally, convenience. Your debit card works everywhere. The app is smooth. The ATMs are on every corner. The friction of leaving feels higher than the pain of staying. But what if I told you the switch takes 15 minutes? And the cost of not switching, over a 20-year savings horizon, could be tens of thousands of dollars? Suddenly the friction looks very different. All right, you now understand the machine. So let's talk about how to step outside of it. And I want to be clear, this isn't about anger at banks. Banks are businesses. They're doing exactly what businesses do, maximizing profit within the rules that exist. What this is about is understanding that you have options, very good options, that most people simply don't know about. Option 1, high-yield savings accounts. These are savings accounts, just like the one you have now, except they actually compete for your money. Online banks and fintech companies have dramatically lower overhead costs than traditional brick-and-mortar banks. They pass some of those savings to you in the form of higher interest rates. Right now, the best high-yield savings accounts are paying between 4 and 5% annually, some even higher. Let's revisit that math. $10,000 at 4.5% for 10 years, with compound interest, grows to over $15,000. $10,000 at 0.01% for 10 years, grows to $10,010. Same money, same 10 years, $5,000 difference, just because of where you parked it. Option 2, Treasury bills and money market funds. These are not complicated financial instruments for Wall Street insiders. They are simple, government-backed savings vehicles, some of the safest places money can sit. U.S. Treasury bills are essentially short-term loans you make to the government. In return, the government pays you interest, currently around 4 to 5%. The full faith and credit of the United States backs every dollar. Money market funds work similarly, low risk, liquid, and currently offering yields that make traditional savings accounts look like a prank. Option 3, the ladder strategy. This is how people who understand money think about their savings. Instead of dumping everything in one account, you split it across different instruments with different time horizons. Some money in a high-yield savings account for immediate access. Some in 3-month Treasury bills for short-term needs. Some in a 1-year CD if you can lock it away. Each rung of the ladder earns more than the last, and you always have money coming available at regular intervals. Now, the one action step, the single thing I want you to actually do after this video ends. Search for the best high-yield savings accounts available today. Compare rates. Pick one. Open an account. It takes 15 minutes and zero financial expertise. That's it. That's the move. We started this video with a split screen. A bank making $58 billion in profit, and your savings account making 4. Now you know why. Fractional reserve banking, net interest margin, deregulation, lobbying, status quo bias, money illusion, the invisible theft of inflation. These aren't conspiracy theories. They are features of a system that has been optimized over decades to extract maximum value from the inertia of ordinary savers. But here's what's also true. Banks aren't villains. They're just very good at business. And for a long time, the information asymmetry, the gap between what they knew and what you knew, was their greatest competitive advantage. That gap just closed. You now understand how the machine works. You know the alternatives exist. You know the math. You know the psychology that kept you stuck. So let's go back to that number one more time. $10,000 at your big bank earns roughly $10 a year. $10,000 in a high-yield savings account earns roughly $490 a year. $480 difference every single year for doing nothing more than moving an account. The bank didn't change. The economy didn't change. You just stopped letting them have the advantage. Knowledge isn't just power. In personal finance, knowledge is money. Go earn yours.